Welcome and thanks for joining me today on how to add $30,000 to $60,000 of value to your house. My name is Dan Rochon, and I have been in the real estate industry as a sales agent or broker for around 11 years now, and as an investor for, oh my goodness, almost 20 years. And through the time of being involved in this industry, I've learned a great deal in regards to what type of improvements to be able to do to a house and what type of strategies to be able to add, tens of thousands of dollars to the value of a property. Now, whether if you're selling 3 months from now, you're selling today, you plan to be there forever, this webinar will be valuable to you, and we will go through strategies that, regardless of your situation, if you just want to add value to your property, this is going to be a good presentation for you. So let me talk to you about the principles of sale that I've developed through the years of my experience, which include Selling 360, which is really just understanding your situation. Smart fix-ups. If I put $1 into an investment, I want to get multiple dollars in return, $2 or $3 in return. So how can I do that? Staging. Logic makes you think and motion makes you act, and we want to make certain that a buyer acts to be able to spend the most amount of money for the sale of our property. Marketing and prospecting. We're going to talk about today's technology, and oh my goodness, there's so much available, and so few agents actually utilize today's technologies to this full advantage, and we're going to talk about how you could do that. And then advanced negotiations. So we're going to talk about specific strategies. Listen, I'm going to bullet point it so that it's easy for you to understand. Certainly in the time that I have available to you, I'm not going to be able to teach you psychology or neuro-linguistic programming or hypnosis. Yet I will be able to teach you the Cliff Note versions of those strategies that you can implement now to be able to influence the negotiations and to be able to understand of when and how to be able to get the most amount of money for the sale of your house. Now, let's say you're in that position right now. And you're trying to think like, am I going to sell my house? Am I going to stay in my house? These are the types of things that we're going to talk about the Selling 360. So this is specifically what we're doing when we're doing the Selling 360 is we're understanding what it is that could potentially get in your way of selling your house. Typically, by the way, those things are money and time. And if for example, if you're intending to improve the property, those are the things that could potentially get in your way. And we'll talk about that later, a little bit more later. But right now, I just want you to understand that these are the things that we're intending to understand as we go through the process of evaluating your situation. We want to understand and say, okay, how am I going to get the money to be able to, if I do want to do, some improvements, where's that money going to come from? Do I have equity in the house? If you bought between, say, 2000 and 2003, 4, you definitely have equity in your house. But if you also bought between 2009 and 2012, you also most likely have equity in your house as well. So understanding when you bought the property, and that doesn't mean that you don't have equity if you bought in other times, because each situation is different. I'm just right now giving general ballpark, time frames. But what we want to do is we want to analyze, do you have equity in the house? And if you have equity in the house, does it make sense to be able to transfer that money from the equity into a tangible asset of an improvement? And what we know is that most of the time when you do that, you will get a return on that investment that's going to be 100-200% return in many cases. And what you have to understand is it often makes a lot of sense to be able to take equity from a property and then reinvest that equity into the house, because literally you're not losing the money. If you go out, because you may think, well, I have a $30,000 that I can access in regards to a line of credit from my property. And you may be considering, say, okay, if I get that line of credit and then I spend it, now I've lost the money. No, you've just transferred the money. You took the money from the value of your property and then you put it into a tangible asset of an improvement in your property. And oh, by the way, if you intend on living there, indefinitely, now you get to enjoy that improvement as well. And if you intend to sell, now you're able to to reap the benefits of the improved value of the property. Now let's talk about again, selling 360. These are the things that we're intending to understand when we're evaluating your situation. So understanding that what is it that we're going to be selling, and there's specific questions that we're going to be asking. So why are you moving? Motivation is really the most important to understand. Do you have a job relocation? Do you want to downsize because your kids are they're off to college, or do you want to get a larger home because wife is pregnant? Maybe you're having a second child. Congratulations, that's awesome. And that 2 or 3 bedroom townhome is just not gonna cut it anymore, and it's time to maybe upgrade, get that single family home. So where are you going to be moving to? Why that area? Is it because it's because of a job? Is it because of family that lives in the area? Whatever the case may be. And what you're going to have to do is we're going to have to consider, when we're looking at an area, we're going to have to consider things like if it's closer to DC, if like DC is a central point to the DMV area, then you have to think that as we get closer to the pinpoint of the middle, prices in general will be higher. And as we go further away from that pinpoint, prices will be lower, yet your commute, you're going to be looking at a lot of brake lights, right? So your commute's going to be, much more significant. So these are the types of things that we're going to have to consider to make certain that you're making, good decisions in regards to when you sell, where you're going to be moving to. How soon do you need to be there? Or before I get into that, maybe you're moving out of the area, and if you're moving out of the area, then that's going to bring up different considerations than if you're relocated within the area. How soon do you need to be there? If you need to be there next week, we're going to take a very different strategy than if you need to be there 6 months from now. Because certainly if you need to be there next week, then it may make sense to not do any improvements, to just do the staging, to do the proper marketing and prospecting, and to be able to make certain that we're appealing to the emotions of a buyer, and then that we're doing the negotiation in a smart manner, utilizing the advanced negotiations. So so ask yourself, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being extraordinarily urgent, how motivated am I to sell this house? Okay, and if it's a 10, that in itself is something that let's figure out if it is a 10. Again, right now we're just doing an analysis. That's what the Selling 360 is. And if you have a high motivation, well, that may in of itself just be a concern, because we want to make certain that high motivation is not associated with desperation, for example. Okay, let's say if you're having troubles paying your mortgage, or you have a job relocation that starts next week, or there's a very significant thing in your life that's occurring that's going to cause you to want to sell quickly, then one of the things that we're going to want to make certain is that we're really managing the emotions so that that high need is not going to get in your way. Now, on the opposite end of that, if you have no urgency, a 2 or a 3, then maybe you shouldn't even consider to sell your house, because you're going to just really basically just waste your time, because most likely I find if you don't have a motivation, you're going to let that house, you're going to overprice the house, you're going to let it linger on the market, and you're going to not sell it, because you're going to list it. A lot of times people say, I'll just list it and I'll see what the market can bring. It doesn't matter if I sell it or not. Well, I can tell you right now, predictably, based off of evidence, that property will not sell. So save yourself some time, some hassle, some money, and your real estate agent's time as well. And if you're not motivated to sell the house, then don't. But we can still improve it to get the highest value. So in understanding, what is it about the house? Taking a look, how many square feet is it? How long have you owned it? What's the condition of it? If it's, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the condition of it? On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the condition, the neighborhood, in regards to amenities, in regards to shopping, in regards to things for children, etc. And going back to the condition, if you rated it a 7, what would it take to get it to a 10? And let's take a look at what it would take to get it to a 10, and then does that make sense for us to do those improvements? And will those improvements actually get you a return? Have you done updates since you've owned it? And have those updates since you've owned it, have they allowed for you to improve the value already, or maybe you've done some improvements to the property that are more logical? So you have to understand, and we'll talk about this here in a bit when we get into the fix-ups that you should do, is that we want to be able to get the highest return, we want to stick with the emotional improvements more so than the logical improvements. Meaning that as long as a hot water heater is functioning, I would not replace a hot water heater, because I have, in the years of my experience, not a single time have I seen somebody come into a house and hug a water heater and say, oh my goodness, I love this water heater, right? It's not an emotional appeal, and people don't fall in love with water heaters or utilities and that type of stuff. And of course, if it's broken or needs improvement, that's a different conversation. Do you own real estate investments? We want to know if you own other real estate investments, because there's certain tax strategies that, depending on your situation in regards to what you own, that will impact what how you structure the deal. There's the capital gains exemption that you should be aware of. That if you're a single and you've owned a property more than 3 out of the last 5 years, they don't have to be consecutive. And if you're single, you have a $250,000 gain that you can have exempted. And if you're married, a $500,000 gain that could be exempted. And then understanding that you're backing out purchase price, you're backing out cost of sales, you're backing out capital improvements, and those are the types of things that we're backing out in that sale. If you do own other real estate investing, maybe it makes sense to sell one of the investment properties and do what's called a 1031 tax deferred exchange, where you're deferring the taxes of the property. So there's a lot of strategies that can be employed depending on your situation of what you own and what your intentions are. So these are the questions that we're going to really want to understand. So again, going back, what are you selling? What's the property? Is it a condominium? Is it a mid-rise? Is it a single-family home? What do other properties in the area, what do they sell for? And what's your competition? So we want to, when we're looking at competition, so really when you're looking at other properties in the area, you're looking at properties that are active, properties that are recently under contract, and properties that are recently sold. The active properties, you could consider those your competition. Okay, so if you put your buyer hat on and you're out there and you're looking at homes to buy, and the properties that are active are the ones that you're going to go in. So say your property is worth $500,000 in that ballpark, and a buyer is looking to buy a home for $500,000, and they go, and the active properties are going to be the ones that they're going to look in. So those are going to be the most significant in regards to the improvements that we do. We want to make certain that we're equal to those properties or better. Properties that are under contract are going to indicate what the market is going to. All that's going to indicate is that it was listed at a price, and somebody made an offer that got accepted at the price that it was made for, that was offered at. We don't know ultimately what that price is going to be until it goes to closing, but we do know it was listed at a price that caused an action, and that's what we want to do. Is we want to cause an action. Preferably, the action would be to be able to get an offer that will get accepted at your price and your terms. And then you've got properties that have recently sold. That's the history. That's looking backwards. Now, what's most significant to that you should understand is that an appraiser, when they appraise the property, they're going to be very, very interested in those properties that have recently sold. So you should consider that as well. And what that means to you as a home seller is that when a buyer gets their financing, if the property does not appraise, then that means that buyer either has to come to closing with a difference. Say, for example, if you're under contract for $100,000 and the property appraises for $90,000, of course that's not going to, I'm just using easy numbers here, but that buyer is going to have to come in with that $10,000 between the $90,000 and the $100,000 if they want to move forward with the property. Now, most likely they have an appraisal contingency, which allows for them to also back out of the property as well. So in reality, what's going to happen is that buyer most likely is going to say, listen, I'll still move forward if you reduce the price to $90,000, of which is what it was appraised for. So the reason why I'm sharing that with you is because when we're looking at comparable value, we want to make certain that we're considering what properties have most recently been sold, because that's going to be important. And then evaluating what's going to take to be able to get the biggest return on your on the sale of your property. Again, we're just evaluating exactly what it is that we're doing. So now that we've evaluated it, now let's talk about translating those improvements into dollars through doing smart fix-ups. Can we take a $400,000 house and we could turn it into a $500,000 house? We could. Would it make sense in most cases? Probably not. Because what we don't want to do is we don't want to overinvest into the property. We want to be smart about our investments. We want to make certain that the investments that we do, that we invest $1, we get $2 or $3 in return. So to be able to get a swing of a $400,000 property to sell for $500, unless that $400,000 property is extraordinarily distressed, it's unlikely that it would be smart for us to improve it to the value of $500. So what we want to do is we want to be certain that the investments that we do to the property get us the biggest return, even if it's $5,000 and we're able to increase the price by $15,000. But again, you go back to that Selling 360. Part of that process is, what is your risk tolerance? Because in the Selling 360 process, if your risk tolerance is very, very low, you may not consider to invest $5,000 to get $15,000 in return, basically a $10,000 swing. Yet if your risk tolerance is higher, then that may make perfect sense to you. So the investments that we want to do in the property is, again, I mentioned it previously about making emotional investments, because people, they do not fall in love with the roof. They want the biggest bang. We want to get you the biggest bang for your buck in regards to your investments, and we want to. In those investments, typically they're going to be curb appeal. That's going to be the first thing that a home buyer is going to see when they drive up to your property, is going to be the exterior of it. So when we're looking at the curb appeal, we want to actually walk into the front door just like a home buyer would, because they're not going to go through the garage or the side door like you do. And we're going to want to make certain that the trees are not overgrown, and that we don't have to brush the trees out of the front of our faces, that the landscaping, that there's no weeds there, that it's freshly mulched. Let me tell you, mulch is the biggest bang for your buck that you could ever imagine to invest in. That we are that the curb appeal is giving that emotional appeal to a buyer. Because what you have to understand is that we consciously only think with around 7% of our brains, and subconsciously we're processing things with 93% of our brains. So oftentimes you can drive by a house and there's something that's not right about that curb appeal, and because it doesn't, because maybe there's weeds in the yard, and it just doesn't look great. It can easily be fixed, but subconsciously our brains are telling us, hey, there's something wrong here. Okay, so we want to be able to appeal to that subconscious, because it's really the people's subconscious that gets them to take action, not their conscious. Okay, so consciously we can look at it and we can say, yeah, you know what, I can mow the grass and it's great, but you've already sort of subconsciously, if the curb appeal is not ideal, sort of rejected it in some way. So great things that you can do, again, mulch, trim back the trees, make sure there's no weeds. You can paint it. A lot of times, according if the HOA will allow you to do it, you can paint the cement on the doorstep. You can paint the front door. You certainly want to make certain that you're looking at the HOA to be certain, if you have an HOA, to be certain that you're not that you're utilizing colors that would be acceptable. Power wash, that's always always recommended if need be. A lot of different repairs that I had a house that, unfortunately, we did do some smart fix-ups on, but the seller was only willing to go so far. And one of the major things I had recommended, which was she did not accept, and I can understand, I can accept that she didn't accept, was that the front step was a little bit, it sort of like dented into the ground, so it wasn't level. And it would have been a very major investment to be able to level off that front stoop. And the seller was coming from a logical point of view and said, you know what, I'm not willing to put the money into that. Yet I think that probably would have really benefited her. We were able to sell that property, yet it was not an easy property to sell. So a lot of times we will. In fact, that same house I just told you about, I had somebody call me and say, "Hey Dan, I was going to show the house today, but I ended up not selling it because we drove past it and something just didn't feel good about it. There was just something that I don't know what it was, but something didn't feel good about it." And I truly believe that was because the entryway curb, literally the curb, the stoop there was not was sunken into the ground, even though they had put a lot of money on the inside of it. So how do you decide what curb appeal to add? You really have to know the community. You're depending if you're in a townhome community, you're going to want to take a look at what the neighbors are doing. Take a look at what the nicest homes are. Cut grass in the spring and the summertime is important. It's vital. Raked up the leaves is vital. These are all small things that you may overlook that really will get you the highest return on the value of your property. So you can see here on these slides where you can see, these are extremes of curb appeal that's not ideal and curb appeal that is ideal. But you can imagine that these properties, well, first of all, the one on the left here that's overgrown, you probably are looking at that right now thinking, well, that's a horrible property on the inside, and you're probably right about that, but maybe it's, could it possibly be beautiful on the inside? Sure. And then the one on the right, you say, oh my goodness, that property on the inside, that home on the inside is going to be really, really appealing, but could it be sort of, not ideal on the inside? Sure, it could be, right? But either way, there's certainly one of these that you're going to be more inclined to take a look at than the other, and I'm going to guess that one is probably over there on the right-hand side. So again, just a bullet point what I've already shared with you: mulching the bed, trimming the trees, painting exterior doors, not ducking underneath bushes to get in the front doorway, making certain that it's attractive and that there's really no need to maintain. And then one of the things, there's some strategies. So I had a property, oh my goodness, it was like 6 months ago, that the seller had this chain link fence that went around it, and they were asking me, Dan, should I replace the fence? What should I do to this? And in that case, what we ended up doing was we got their 16-year-old son and a few cans of black spray paint, that black spray paint, and we spray painted the fence, the chain link fence, black, and it was definitely the most appealing option that we had in regards to a bang for a buck. Now, we could have replaced it with vinyl, or we could have replaced it for wood, but in that case, it made sense to say, hey, the fence is already there. Let's go ahead and let's have this spray painted. Now, when you look at vinyl and you look at wood as options of improvements for a fence, what I found is that if you get a good handyman, you get a good contractor, they can build a wood fence for a lot cheaper than you can to go to a major hardware store or a major distributor and buy the vinyl prefab. But you have to have the right crew in place to be able to make that happen, because if you don't, then that could be more expensive as well. One of the resources that I have is a resource that, because I have a lot of resources in regards to vendors and that type of thing, is a guy that will come out, he'll build a fence for us and do so in a very limited amount of time, and cut all the brackets and put it up, and it really looks beautiful. So the first piece of a smart fix-up is curb appeal. The second piece, carpet and paint. Let me tell you, carpet and paint will be the best improvements that you can do, the biggest bang for your buck. So what's in right now for paint is what I call is grayish, with white trim, and the grayish is something that's it's a neutral color. It's something that is it's going to basically be, if you think of it like sort of like a clean palette. That's what grayish is going to do for you, and the bright white trim is going to pop out. Now, in indented areas, like on the sides of an extended fireplace, where the walls sort of go in, like where the bookcases would be, but many times there's not actually bookcases there. But I'm just using that to describe so you can understand. So where the walls are indented on the left and the right of a fireplace, when you paint that color a lighter color than the walls that are accenting it, then what that's going to do is that's going to make the room look larger. The same way as you paint the backs of the closets white, and when the doors are open, those closets are going to the closets are going to look larger, right? So there's really simple tricks that we can do to be able to visually make the rooms look larger. And because when the rooms are larger, then the house is larger and it's a more appealing, which is going to allow for you to get the highest profit. So replacing carpets, I mentioned to you that replacing carpets is really sort of a vital thing that I recommend. I'm not going to say just clean it. I have so many people come up to me and say, "Hey Dan, I can just clean this carpet, it'll be almost like new." I said, no, it won't be almost like new. And the reason why you're suggesting that you can clean the carpet is because it's not ideal, right? And certainly they're looking to save some money. But I'm going to tell you, replacing carpet is much, much more inexpensive than what you could ever imagine. You should at least have a conversation with a carpet installer to be able to see what it would cost you. Because I can tell you, if you just did curb appeal, you did replace the carpet, and you painted throughout, those are the top three things that I promise you'll get $2-3 of return in regards to the investment that you're making. So, in addition to that, the other things that are really vital and important to a home buyer are going to be kitchens and bathrooms. So, with bathrooms, there's some strategies that if you have like that 1950s bathtub that's that pink, you can get a bathtub glaze for around $350 to $400. So if you haven't seen what glazing is, just Google glaze bathtub, and you'll see. And they can make that bathtub look brand new and change the color to modern, to white. It's rather inexpensive to do that and relatively easy. The only thing is that you will want to be out of the house for a day or so because the glazing is really it's got a really bad smell. But as long as you can handle the smell, then that's definitely something that and the smell will go away about a day or so. Getting the shower tiled, make it brand new. The floor in the bathroom, the vanity, the toilet, painting it, replacing the fixtures. These are all really low investments that can get you a big return. You can look at this bathroom here. You can see the before and after pictures. That's one of our clients that we did that for them, and it was a relatively inexpensive improvement. And certainly you can see, it wasn't a very large bathroom, so it was a little bit of a challenge for us to improve it. I wish that we had a little bit more size in there. But you can certainly see the difference between those two, where the one on the left there is going to be far less appealing than the one on the right, and that is the same bathroom right there. You can see, a couple more photographs here in regards to the smart fix-ups of, and again, that's also giving you some some good examples of good examples of the photography there as well, because when you have better photographs, then it's going to appeal as well. So let's talk about kitchens. I mentioned that briefly. So today's kitchens, we're going to want stainless steel, granite countertops. Corian would be acceptable. But I think granite would probably be preferred. New appliances, cabinets up to date or updated, and that's your return on investment on the kitchen is. This is going to be more expensive than the curb appeal. This is going to be more expensive than the carpet and the paint, more expensive than the bathrooms. But these are the 5 things that I just mentioned: the curb appeal, the carpet, the paint, the bathrooms, and the kitchens that I would recommend that you put your money into. And the kitchens is going to be the most expensive of them. So this is where you may want to, maybe you have the money to do it, but you may want to take a look at your credit or your equity that you have in your house to be able to afford that. Depending on what you do, it could be anywhere. I don't want to give a number because it's such a large range of what you could do. But what I do know is that there are options that you can have in regards to finding the money, including finding a real estate agent if you're going to sell it to be able to loan you the money, assuming that you have the equity in the house. And that's one of the things that we do in our business here with Greetings DMV. Larger budget, upscale opportunities. So these are things that are going to, be much more investment and bigger bangs for the buck. You can see a photograph here of that's the same kitchen there. That's a more extensive kitchen remodel. But you can see that it is definitely a larger investment, to be able to do something like that, because we had moved around walls. We had actually opened up the staircase. We moved the staircase in this property. We added square footage by closing in a carport and making that into a dining room. And so these are bigger investments. But ultimately what's in is open concepts, open kitchens. And we want to make certain that that if you're going to do a larger improvement, that you definitely are doing that improvement in a manner that's going to be able to get you the biggest bang for the buck. And this is going to probably be more risk as well and more time. Would I suggest to do it? Yes, if you have the budget to do so. You can take a look at this kitchen here. This is the same home. And you can see the difference of option A and option B. This is a scenario here where let's see, to do that kitchen, you're looking at maybe we moved around walls. I mean, the floor, everything. You're maybe $15,000-$20,000. But if you can consider like how much more value do you think we added to that house in option A there and over to option B, significantly more than what we ended up investing into it. I talked about the logical things before and emotional things, and so far everything that we've talked about in regards to improvements are all emotional. Some of the things that we're going to want to stay away from, unless if it's in disrepair, are going to be things such as the hot water heater replacement. Things. I went to a house. Oh my goodness, this was a really sad situation. The husband was terminally ill with cancer, and he unfortunately has passed since. And he wanted to make sure that he's taking care of his family, so it was a very emotional situation, obviously. And I drive up to the property, and they had put around $40,000 or $50,000 into this property, and they had replaced the roof. They had replaced the hot water heater, the electrical, HVAC. But what they did not do, and they actually did, one thing that they did do that was good was they did the curb appeal and they redid the driveway, which was really, really attractive coming in. What they did not do, however, was they did not replace the kitchen. That was literally a 1950s kitchen. I mean, it had like one of those, I don't know, I mean, this may be, they had a Leave It to Beaver kitchen set. So if you are not old enough to know what Leave It to Beaver is, then that's another thing that's your homework right now. You got to Google Leave It to Beaver and you'll understand what their kitchen looked like. But just look at the Leave It to Beaver kitchen and then add 50 years of time onto that, 50 or 60 years of time onto that, and that's what their kitchen looked like. Same with the baths. The baths were that black and white checkered. It was actually very similar to the bathroom that I showed you earlier here in the floor there, the before picture, that 1 inch by 1 inch black and white checkered. And it had the pink bathtub, and it was just really awful. And so I go up to the property, and it was bad because the things that they had spent their money on wasn't the things that they're going to be able to get the most amount of money. And of course, it was unfortunate because they did it before before they met me, and I wasn't intending to make them bad and wrong, considering especially, I mean, I'm never going to make anybody bad and wrong, but particularly in this situation, that was very sad that the guy was was sick, and so but what I'd like for you to learn from that is, unless if it's broke, I wouldn't necessarily take a look at those mechanical items, because again, nobody's going to fall in love with a roof. Nobody's going to fall in love with a water heater. Now, one of the things that you could do with the roof, if it is stained, because there's a certain fungi that's here in the area that will go from roof to roof to roof, and it will put like those black streaks coming down on the roof. There's a a wash. It's not a power wash, but it's a specialized, it's especially designed for cleaning roofs, that you can, for around $400, that you can clean on that roof, and it comes out just sparkling, right? And again, these suggestions are assuming that the roof's not leaking and that type of thing. And now if the roof's leaking, the hot water heater's not working, whatever the case may be, HVAC. These are the types of things that you're going to want to, that if they're not working, you do want to get them fixed. But if they're working, just leave them be and do the emotional appeals. So those are the advice that I have in regards to improvements. In regards to staging, let's say you are going to be selling your house. What you have to understand is that, again, I mentioned it before, logic makes you think and emotion makes you act. If you understand that the home builders are actually, they're in the business of doing what? They're in the business of, building a product, a widget. That widget is going to be a house. And 100% of the time, I promise you, and if you've been to a new home builder, model home, you've experienced this, they will stage it. Why do they stage it? They're going to stage it because they understand that it's going to get them the highest return on their investment. And you should also stage your home as well. So it's top three mistakes that I see in staging is not accommodating for the curb appeal, because again, first impressions count. It's the absence of even understanding what home staging does for you. It's the agent's job is to advise you on the staging process and to advise you on the right professionals to be able to help you with the staging. It is their job to be able to walk you through that. And then not having a well-planned campaign. We want to appeal to the buyer's emotions. We want to access their emotions through the staging process. So having a home value improvement team of connected, well-vetted, trusted professionals, that's something that's going to be important. I'm going to suggest that you download our guide to dependable vetted resources, which has our vetted resources available that I highly recommend. And again, the first time that I did an investment property, it was in Reston, Virginia, and it was years ago, around 18 years ago. And I remember I was at the property, and this was before the time of Angie's List or anything like that, and I was getting all my resources from Craigslist. And I swear to you, 3 different people, a painter, I don't remember who they were, but I know it was 3 different people. Call it a painter, a plumber, and an electrician, all had quote unquote flat tires on their way to the job site, which is certainly I was like, oh, these guys must have been at the same party last night. Well, that's where I was 18 years ago. Through the years, I've been able to develop a well-vetted, well-qualified resource of professionals that will not be overpriced, will not be underpriced. They will be appropriately priced, and they'll do what they say they'll do by when they say they do it. In the rare sense that something goes wrong, they will fix it. Some of the after we have it staged, what we want to do is we want to make certain that we're marketing and we're prospecting for today's marketplace. We have a 39-point marketing plan, which I have outlined here, but some of the things that you should note is the drone video. That's something in the DC metropolitan area, sometimes it's a little bit of a challenge to actually get drone videos if you're too close to DC. But in areas that are further out, as long as you're not along the near Dulles or BWI, you're able to do drone videos depending on how close you are to DC. But there are a lot of restrictions in that. But it should be an expectation of yours, depending on the type of property. Of course, you wouldn't do this as a condominium, but depending on the type of property, that your real estate agent is utilizing drone video. It should be an expectation of yours that your real estate agent is featuring your property on the on social media, on Facebook. Think about this. Facebook allows for us to advertise today to people that are most likely ready to move. So you should be advertising your property to. You go back to that Selling 360. You're identifying the most likely buyer for your property, and as you identify the most likely buyer for your property, say it's going to be most likely going to be a young family, 35 to 45 years old, with 2 children, Their two children are going to be between the ages of 6 and 13, and that's going to be the most likely buyer for this property. Now, we can identify those individuals with that criteria, with the financial ability to be able to buy, with the credit to be able to buy, and with the likeliness that they're going to be able to buy. We are able to identify those individuals and then market directly to them on Facebook. So now if your agent's not doing that or discussing how to do that with you, they should be, right? Now this goes beyond all of the professionally printed photographs, etc. It's utilizing social media, utilizing Google Plus, Pinterest, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and making certain that you're able to get the property out there on as many different websites as possible. Now, I mentioned to you before about advanced negotiation. So what is advanced negotiation? Advanced negotiation is talking about the buyer's, psychology. Okay, so when we're talking about the buyer's psychology, we have to understand the hierarchy of ideas, which starts with physiology, and then to safety, and then to love and belonging, esteem, and then self-actualization. And understanding that will allow for us to really negotiate in a manner that's going to be a high-level negotiation. Now, I promised you that I wasn't going to go too deep on this because I really don't have the time to really explain, a lot of these strategies and techniques yet. What I can tell you is you want to be able to appeal to the emotions of the buyer and the timing of the buyer. Okay, you have to understand that they're going to have a fear of loss. That fear of loss is, for example, how do we appeal to that fear of loss? Well, we do so by doing open houses in a condensed period of time, so that we get as many buyers in that open house as possible. Because if you have an open house and there's 20 people in that open house at one point, that buyer is going to fear that they're going to lose that property. They're going to lose that house. So we want to be able to appeal to that fear of loss. We're going to want to make certain that we understand that a buyer is going to be most motivated to negotiate up front. So we're going to negotiate with that buyer up front, and we're going to make certain that we are accommodating things such as the home inspection that will occur in the future, that we're getting them to agree as quickly as possible, because when they agree as quickly as possible, then we're able to move them towards pleasure, right? If we're able to understand what it is that they are, that the buyer is, perhaps that buyer and perhaps they're moving up. And if we're going to do an interview the best that we can with the buyer's agent and the buyer and find out what it is that's motivating them, and we're going to move them away from pain and move them towards pleasure. And the reason why we're going to move them away from pain is you can think about, like, if a lion is chasing after you, how quickly are you going to take action? You're going to take it very, very quickly. So we're gonna focus on moving them away from pain, but the challenge with moving people away from pain is it's not sustainable. So we want to move them towards pleasure, because if you think about running away from that lion, you're gonna run out of steam here in a second or so, right? But if you're moving towards the love of your family, you're moving towards bringing up your family in this new home, you're utilizing the right language to be able to allow for the buyer to want to live here, then you're going to be able to move them towards pleasure while you're simultaneously moving them away from pain. Some of the things that we can do is we can take a look at the timing of the listing, which would include, if it has an in-ground pool, we want to list it in the summertime, June, July, August. If it has we want to be able to create a refuge, right? So when we're showing the home in the wintertime, we want the fireplaces on. We want them to think, like, I can take my wet clothes off, put them on they're probably just going to throw them on the floor like most people do, but whatever. They're not thinking that. I can take my wet clothes off, I can come in here, and there's this nice, appealing home to me, right? And that's what we want to be able to appeal to. So 6 ways to get to yes. This is a little bit of bonus today. So 6 ways to get to yes is through reciprocation. through commitment and consistency, social proof, liking, authority, and scarcity. So these are 6 ways that that you will allow for a buyer to get to yes, or for anybody to get to yes in a relationship. So reciprocation is, I'll give you one thing if you give me another. So I'll give you a home warranty if you don't give me a hard time with the home inspection, right? I typically would recommend to hold the home warranties out, to do them during the negotiation. You want to be consistent in your communication. You want to have social proof of individuals that want to live in the community, right? So if you have anybody prominent in the community, that's great social proof. You want them to like you, and to be able to have people like you, you have to be able to be in communication with you. Authority is one that's probably not going to appeal too much in these types of negotiations, but what authority is police officer, or if you think of commercials, they'll have a doctor, or a make-believe doctor with a white lab coat, saying how great a health product is, that type of thing. So that's authority. And then scarcity, which would really play in well with the sale of your property. If the buyer thinks that another buyer is going to be interested in that property, then that in of itself is going to be the best scarcity that you could do, and they're going to really take action. And you could do so again through condensed open houses. You can do so through allowing your real estate agent to disclose other offers that are made on the property to potential buyers. So if you get more than one offer on the property, when you get more than one offer on the property, you're able to negotiate them against each other. So next steps, well, first of all, thank you for taking the time to listen to this presentation. If you're in the market to buy a home, sell a home, or invest in real estate, if your family members in the market to buy a home, sell a home, or invest in real estate, please consider me as a resource. I would love to be able to consult, to be able to help. And even if you're not ready to sell now, it would be appropriate for us to have a conversation about how you can get the highest value for your property. Download the reports that are associated with this webinar. And if you need anything at all, feel free to contact me directly, 703-562-1788, or Dan@greetingsvirginia.com. That's Dan@greetingsvirginia.com. And thanks for your time, and look forward to helping you with your success.